So Israel and Lebanon have reached a ceasefire deal to end the conflict on their shared border months and over a year after that conflict began. Over the last couple of months, we have seen Israel's campaign against the Lebanese militia Hezbollah, and this is being hailed as a fresh development in the Middle East, one that could significantly reduce tensions in the region. But joining us now to unpack this ceasefire deal, what exactly it entails, what the strategic motivations are for Israel, Lebanon, two supporting powers, the United States and France, who have also helped hammer this deal out, is Kabir Taneja of the Observer Research Foundation. Kabir, thank you so much for joining us. Could I ask you to just begin by explaining the specifics of this ceasefire deal that has been agreed to by Israel and Lebanon?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Look, I think it's actually a fairly straightforward deal as it stands today. The idea is that the Israeli forces will basically move inwards from their northern borders with Lebanon, and Hezbollah will move also northwards from their southern borders with Israel. So basically, creating this deconflicted zone where exchange of fire and exchange of military activities will cease to exist. That's the crux of it for the moment. And of course, over the past couple of hours, we've already seen that there are reports from Israel that there have been no sort of major air raid sirens going off. That means that there have been no major projectiles launched by Hezbollah towards Israel from Lebanon. So there, at least, it's early hours, but at least for the timing, it seems that it's sticking. The other sort of major deliverable for the ceasefire, which is important to both the sides, both the Lebanese side and the Israeli side, is a return of their people that have been displaced in southern Lebanon and in northern Israel. We have to remember that people got displaced in northern Israel a little bit earlier than majority of the people in southern Lebanon. So a return of these people to their homes, a return of these people to their lands, it has been seen as a critical takeaway from this agreement. And of course, there are broader connotations of this agreement in play. The first being, as I presume from reading the situation, that the ceasefire from the Hezbollah side was pushed, must have been pushed by Iran, because it seizes the escalation ladder a little bit. You have to remember that Hezbollah in Lebanon is a political entity, it's a political party, has had representation in the parliament. That means that it has responsibilities beyond being a militia group or beyond being a proscribed terror organization as it is. At least from the Lebanese point of view, and that the fact also remains that Hezbollah has become a little bit more unpopular in certain sections of Lebanon, which has a very very diverse set of ethnic and religious communities that make up the state of Lebanon.
Right.
So the multiple facets to this, and finally, the largest one, so the broadest one, not the largest one, is that I think Iran has delivered this through Hezbollah as something that it can maybe leverage once Donald Trump takes charge at the White House in January. While you can see it sort of as a victory for the Biden administration, the fag end of its tenure, but I think Iran gave space for this to happen and asked Hezbollah to give space for this to happen, so that they are more on an even keel going forward and giving talks maybe a shot with the Trump administration, which will come with a very hawkish view of Iran, as it did in the previous term as well.
Understood. So if I could ask you to begin with a very quick potted history of what has happened over the last year, because I think it'll give our viewers some background into what happened. Of course, after the October 7th attacks that happened with over 1,000 Israelis being killed, you then had very soon after that Hezbollah commencing strikes on northern Israel, which caused much of the displacement that you were talking about. That has continued over this period of time. Israel has also launched these bombardments. Could you explain that could you put that in context? What is the context over the last year that this ceasefire deal has now been brought in for?
Look, the context is important from the last year because we have to remember this is a ceasefire deal between Lebanon and Israel. That means Hezbollah, Lebanon, and Israel. It does not include Hamas. It does not include the Houthis and so on and so forth, and any of the other sort of militias that have been targeting Israel and the US, both from Syria and Iraq as well. So it's in that term, it's a fairly limited understanding of a very broader conflict. Hamas, of course, the situation in Gaza or a ceasefire with Hamas still remains elusive. The Houthis are at a distance in Yemen, but they have been able to sort of, change the geography, the geopolitical geography of the Red Sea, which has again global connotations and not just the regional connotations. And of course, there are broader questions over Iranian support to militias in Syria and Iran. There is a broader sort of trend to this ceasefire also, that there are some reports that suggested that a trade-off would be to also release sanctions against the Syrian regime. Syria is a very important conduit for the Iranians, and more importantly for the Iranians, Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, who they saved indirectly, at least through the civil war in 2014, 15, 16, is looking to sort of normalize his relationship with the Arab world once again, and this comes after the Saudi-Iran détente that took place earlier this year. So that over the past 12 more than 12 months now, a lot has happened. So it's not just about Gaza right now, and it's not just about Hezbollah right now. What we have seen, this deal is largely a ceasefire towards the Israeli north. That means the two flanks that were activated, one with Gaza and one with Lebanon, at least one for Israel will go quiet for some time at least, if it sticks. That's a big question. If it sticks, that allows the return of Israeli displaced people, of course, to the north, but also reorients Israeli military capacities back into Gaza if needed. They have lost soldiers in Gaza. We have to remember that.
Right.
And though Hamas is very depleted as an organization, the conflict still goes on there. And Israel is a small country as well. It's not a big country. It has limitations of its own.
Right.
So there are multiple facets to why this has taken place right now, in context of a broader framework of the Gaza conflict which has taken place.
Right. Could I ask you, you've already talked about Israel's motivations. If I could ask you to very quickly expand on that and explain, why exactly, how this fits into Israel's broader strategy. We've been talking over the last couple of weeks on this channel. You've come on quite a bit, and I think the last time we talked, you had talked about how Hamas is depleted. It has allowed Israel to, of course, carry on some attacks against Lebanon, because there's been a strong lobby within Israel that believes that, of course, you also have to look at the threat from Hezbollah as well. Where does the ceasefire now leave Israel? What does it free it up to do? What exactly is likely to be the strategy moving forward now that in Gaza it does seem that Hamas, of course, has been diminished as a military force? Where does Israel go from here?
So look, Israel has also multiple of its problems. The first and foremost, what Israel wanted to do with what it has done against Hezbollah, for example, more specifically with Hezbollah, but also with Hamas, is that it's completely decapitated its leadership. Hassan Nasrallah, who led Hezbollah for a good 32 years, was assassinated. His supposed successor, Saifuddin, was assassinated, and now the person who has taken charge is seen as someone who's not as charismatic and who's not as much of a people mobilizer as the previous two used to be. That automatically for Israel also opens a door that, in case there has to be sort of some compromises made, this may be the best time to make them. And if there is another leadership change within Hezbollah, the next people coming in may not be as for the lack of a better term, academic as Naim Qasim is, who has just taken charge. But when it comes to Israel by itself, also we have to remember that the pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu from his far-right ecosystem, which constitutes and prods his coalition government, is always intense. They are very keen on annexation of parts of West Bank, for example, which is a broader issue now, very slowly brewing, and can become a big problem for the region going forward in the couple of months if Netanyahu has to cede space to the far right coalition. Because if the far right coalition is not placated in some shape or form by Netanyahu, his government is on very shaky ground. And if he's out of power, he goes back to a slew of corruption cases, the potential of going to prison, and so on and so forth, that is already hanging on his head. So Israel's own domestic politics is very important to understand on how a lot of these decisions are being taken and why they are being taken. Now, there are divisions within Israel polity, and including not just polity, but there are tensions between the civil and military ecosystems as well, which is very rare for a security state like Israel. But one thing that everyone, I think, despite their disagreements and political disagreements with each other, one thing that they all agree with is that military operations against the likes of Hezbollah and Hamas were the correct decisions to take. So that there is unanimous unity on that part. But when it comes to sort of the Israeli overarching and broader thinking, I think first they don't want to push the Americans far away too much. They know that Donald Trump will support Israel, but Donald Trump is a battle between personality versus policy, and they want the policy part to win first. But to make that win, they have to placate the personality part as well. So I don't think anyone in Israel is under any assumption that it is going to be a cakewalk for Israel as well. As far as Donald Trump is concerned, he will come and try to look for a deal in which he says that, look, I got the war stopped, and I've also asked the Israelis to stop their military actions in places like Gaza. Hence, the civilian casualties have come down.
Right. Could I also ask you then, you also alluded to Iran's motivations in pulling this off. Of course, to our viewers, again, a potted history of the fact that Hezbollah is also seen as a Shia militia, has a close relationship with Iran, seen as this broad axis of resistance that Iran helms and funds in the Middle East. That's the connection that Kabir is making. So if I could ask, Kabir, in terms of Iran's motivations, the impending return of Donald Trump, what exactly was Iran thinking of when there have been tensions between Iran and Israel, of course, direct firing of missiles and so on and so forth, fears of a renewed conflict wider conflict in the region. So what were Iran's motivations in pushing Lebanon towards this ceasefire deal? What does it say about where the Iranian leadership is at this point in time in terms of how they're seeing this conflict?
Yeah, I think, look, the Iranian motivations are always very difficult and translucent to read. But from what I gather, I think, like I mentioned before, the Iranians want to start on some sort of even pedestal with the Americans when Trump comes into play. They understand that he's transactional. They understand he likes deals. They're both Iranians and Trump have one thing in common, that they are deal makers, right? They are transactional, both of them. So I think Iran sees an opportunity in that personality trait of Donald Trump that they can sort of tap into and come to some sort of maybe agreement or conclusion in which it opens up Iran to a little bit more political and diplomatic access to the Americans directly. If Trump can do that with Kim Jong-un, I think the Iranians think that they can also sort of try at least to manage some sort of outreach to the Trump administration, which would have been much more palatable than trying to do it with the Biden administration. So that's the first thing. The second thing with the Iranians is, look, I think one reason why, for example, they have not retaliated against Israeli attacks in October, and they keep on saying that it's going to come at any point. I think the diplomacy that Iran has mobilized over the past couple of months, which includes Foreign Minister Agarchi going to more than a dozen countries, including Saudi Arabia, where he met Mohammed bin Salman, although protocol-wise he was only supposed to meet the foreign minister. But the fact that Mohammed bin Salman came and met Arakchi by himself shows the importance of that detente that has taken place between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And in general, I think Iran taking a very strong stance against Israel for the Palestinian has resonated amongst the Arab populations as well. And that's something a lot of Arab countries are a bit worried about, that Iran's popularity for its actions may actually go up. Because it has not framed this conversation as a Shia versus Sunni or in any other sort of ethnic or sectarian point of view, but Iran has shaped it as sort of the protection of Islam and protection of Muslim lives rather than anything else. And the fact that the other Arab states are not doing anything kinetically puts Iran on a weirdly advantageous position. So there are multiple of these sort of diplomatic plays that are that have been taking place over the past 12 months that I think for Iran have provided much more dividend than any military action could. And the Iranians have managed to do that fairly successfully. Whether they are surprised at their own success or not, I'm not particularly sure. But a lot of the diplomacy that they have unleashed across the Organization of Islamic countries, across Arab countries, Arab neighbors, Qatar, Turkey, and so on and so forth, I think has provided them with a lot of maneuverable space in the region. And
Right.
that is something that everyone, including the US, will have to factor in when dealing with this situation directly.
Right. Kabir, I think I am forced to ask the question that everyone will really want the answer to, which is that, look, you've had a ceasefire deal here. Does this mean that there is perhaps some genuine momentum now for perhaps a broader de-escalation in the region, perhaps a broader ceasefire that brings the fighting that has engulfed the region for the last 14 months to an end? Or is that simply too premature a hope?
I look all these sort of these kind of sort of agreements on the ceasefire and so on and so forth, they're all incremental. I think the fact that they have reached this one before, let's say, Gaza was much more complicated, both for the Arab world and for Israel. But this one, I think this one is it's a good sign that such an agreement has been come through, and it's a good sign that the Israeli cabinet, despite its division on ideology and how the far right views dealing with Hezbollah, has come to this conclusion that, look, we have to sort of at least try and stop for some time, is a good thing. But see, my broader question would be how long this continues. I mean, what are the larger aims to this? Is there a political track parallelly at play which can continue to make this ceasefire be a little bit long term? We already know that UN peacekeepers are going to play a critical role in this, and this could be, this could well be a template for a ceasefire in Gaza as well. We have been talking about peacekeepers in Gaza for a long period of time, including Arab peacekeepers, if UN-led peacekeepers are unpalatable. So a lot of movement can be taken from this current ceasefire, which is the first real ceasefire that has been achieved over the past many months. But I think we'll still have to or should wait and watch on whether it sticks and what kind of dividends it ultimately provides to all the actors being involved.
Understood. Kabir Taneja of the Observer Research Foundation sitting down with us, explaining the ceasefire deal that we've seen between Israel and Lebanon, what it means for the different players in the region, that's Israel, Iran, the Gulf states, America, France as well, and also what this means for the conflict going forward. Kabir, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for our viewers for watching us on India Today Global.